Hello, and a warm welcome to the first of a series of webinars I'm going to be doing on Industry 4.0. I am basically going to be deconstructing it, and then I'm going to be rebuilding it, essentially. And there's good reasons I'm going to be doing this. I think Industry 4.0 is underdefined. I think it's very high level. I don't think it helps the people on the ground to actually achieve what the high level vision is. So I'm going to put together a series of webinars initially, maybe half a dozen, and then I'm going to be going into more of a workshop. So there'll be live events and people can comment live, ask questions live, etc., etc. So why am I doing it? That's obviously a good question. Well, I want to do more. So I think the industry is a bit lost. I think there's a bit of a bandwagon that people are jumping on. Like I said, everybody has been talking about Industry 4.0 for many years. If I asked 100 people to describe what 4.0 means to them, I'd probably get 100 different answers. In fact, I would get 100 different answers. Some of them would be wildly different. And so in my time working in the pharmaceutical industry, I don't really like ambiguity. I prefer things to be defined so that people can actually point at it, people can actually discuss it, and there is less room for assumptions. So you can see here I've put together a mind map. I've deliberately done this because it's how I keep my thoughts down on paper rather than clogging up my brain. And hopefully it helps you people out there as well, give you something to point at, help you visualize what it means to move into 4.0, or actually adaptive manufacturing, as I call it. And there's a good reason why I call it adaptive manufacturing. I think it's more of a clean sheet, put it that way. And over to the right of this mind map, you'll see the beginnings of how I'm redefining it. So today I'm going to be talking about what exactly is adaptive manufacturing, what exactly is Industry 4.0 as far as I can read it, and why we want to do it. Okay, so my involvement, a little bit about me. My name's Daniel Manners. I have been in automation controls all my life. I've been in manufacturing all my life. I have been on the shop floor with a couple of manufacturers. I've been an engineer and a manager. I've also been a machine builder a couple of times in different guises. And I've worked in many, many verticals within manufacturing. And I've also been a systems integrator. Okay, so I've been involved in probably most of the topics that you would expect to find. Not saying I'm all-knowing, that's not true. In fact, one of the most important things about adaptive manufacturing is that no one person or entity has all the answers. All right? It's really about communication, it's about honesty, and many things, but one of the main things is removing silo behavior. So all of this I'll cover, many, many, many more topics. It's a huge mind map, but again, you know, having something that people can point at is incredibly important. So the things I find frustrating and another driver for me doing this, because this is not scripted, so there might be a few bloopers. So I'm pretty frustrated with the marketing word soup. All right, you can see that down there on the bottom of the screen. Terminology is probably the main topic for today, I would say. Until you get some sort of terminology foundation, you know, you can go off piece quite easily. One of my big bugbears is people talking about Industry 5.0. Let's keep it serious for a minute. There is probably less than 1% of manufacturing that is anywhere near what is perceived to be as 4.0. Okay, and I've put that down there. You know, if I was going to say there is a 5.0. If I was going to define it, I would probably say it was an adaptive manufacturing facility that self-adapts. That's probably what I would call 5.0. But for where we are today, with 4.0, I'm going to be talking about adaptive manufacturing, like I say, because really it's about adapting your manufacturing assets more easily, more cost effectively, but also enabling that whole life cycle approach. Okay, so people talk about modularity and flexibility. Modularity is key. Flexibility, I think, is more, I would use flexibility more with existing monolithic manufacturing, more cascading processes, bending that philosophy, if you like. Adaptive manufacturing is very different, okay? It does lean on cellular manufacturing, which again isn't new, but really it's about decoupling your processes, which in turn makes them more flexible. So, moving on to what I was talking about really was let's talk about terminology for 4.0. Okay, so I'm going to slide it over, just wait for it to re-render. This is what I've got from the website of Industry 4.0. It's the closest I've got to an executive summary, basically, which is a pity. It says it's a limited summary. I would say, okay, let's have a summary anyway, if you know what I mean, and then go down into the subsections. But anyway, we've got what we've got. So you can see here in front of you, there's half a dozen topics here. And to the right, you will see a graphic. So this is me translating 4.0 in a more visual way. And then I expand again to the right, but I'm not going to be going on to that today. So today, let's just go through what Industry 4.0 says. So flexible production, all right, this is not exactly clear. It kind of says digitization enables you to have less of a cascading approach, which is partially true, but isn't really the whole picture. The convertible factory, now this is very interesting, okay? So this is really where I'm not really disrespecting the 4.0 entity at all. It's just, I think it fails to help the people on the ground, okay? I think there's a mismatch. So part of my role really in my day job is to make sure the vision meets the factory floor. Okay, so that's where I come in. And the convertible factory is a very, very good description here of, you know, what ultimately we want to be achieving. So the convertible factory means, yes, okay, 1 week we could be making toothpaste. The next week we could be making shampoo or conditioner or whatever, face creams, and so on and so forth. Now we're not going to, for reasons I'll explain a bit more in the other webinars, we're not going to convert a factory easily, all right? It has been done in times of crisis and war, but we're not going to convert a factory that makes toothpaste, for example, into a factory that makes aeroplanes. We're not going to do that quickly, all right? So the infrastructure is completely different. But what we can do is make it more adaptive, which is really why I'm using the term adaptive manufacturing. Now, it was coined a few years ago. I don't know who coined it. It's probably kind of irrelevant, but like I said, it gives me a bit of a clean sheet to talk about, and it feeds into this new model. So, customer next on the list, customer orientated solutions. This is already happening in a way. It's lot size 1, MOQ 1, same thing. More customization, so direct interaction, if you like, with the end consumer. Not so much the end customer, but the consumer. This is all good. Customers is what keeps us all in business. And again, this is actually completely possible with adaptive manufacturing. It's one of the main reasons which led me down this sort of design approach. As I said, I'm an architect, so of this adaptive manufacturing, and there's much more to talk about in the future, but we're going to stick with the terminology side. So customer oriented solutions, it's tied into logistics. In fact, you can see over here that we've got adaptive manufacturing and logistics lumped together, okay? We've also got the use of data, which again here is linked really directly to digital transformation. There's a few people out there doing some fantastic work in digital transformation, which I'll talk about again in more detail. But the reason why it's a cornerstone is because without data for the whole life cycle of not only the manufacturing plant, but also of the products themselves, will eventually make you obsolete. Okay, now data is such a big part. Again, you can see there digital twin. It's also a part of sustainability. So touching on the digital twin side of it, again, I'm hopping around because everything's interrelated, but the digital twin, I work a lot in stage 1 and 2 or phase 1 and 2 of digital twin. There's other important components, as you can see, the connectivity and data side and the adaptation and continuous improvement. So, but from my point of view, initially, the digital twin is done in the concept design of adaptive manufacturing cells and plants and factories. But again, they're all interrelated. So we have to be careful. This is why I'm trying to visualize it, is because terminology can lead us down different paths. So it can mean that two people having the same interactive conversation can actually be talking about different things. So this is really the reason why I have put this mind map together. Now you can see I expand on it. That's not for today's topic. I talk a lot about the why, because the why in any of these projects is incredibly important. I will also talk about the finance. You can see that there. Return on investment, for example, I'm not going to go into detail, but it doesn't mean anything. It might mean something to the finance teams, but we need something that bridges the finance world with the real world. And I will talk about that. That's incredibly important. I can't tell you how many projects have failed because the finance calculations are much more short-termism. All right. So traditionally, in the monolithic world, the time frames would be 3 to 5 years. You probably chuck quite a few of the assets away. They've paid for themselves, and then you've got to buy new assets to do something slightly different. Adaptive manufacturing is incredibly different. The core assets of adaptive manufacturing are going to be with you for 15, 20, 30 years. All right. You can customize them as you go, as your customers' need change, as your manufacturing needs change, right? Which needs a completely different set of finance tools. But back to a little bit more about the definitions and what we're actually trying to achieve. So bear with me. Like I said, this isn't scripted, but what we're talking about is we're moving away from monolithic manufacturing lines, that cascading approach, if you like, to manufacturing. We're also talking about the adaptation. So really what this segment in the 4.0 executive summary said of the convertible factory, essentially. What I get involved with and what is really key is the decoupling of these processes, decoupling of these cells, all right? And then ensuring there's a specification, if you like, for how they interact. And there's lots of advantages for this. But one of the easiest ways for me to explain this to you is what you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, which is a screenshot from the AMD website. It's quite eye-opening, really, how you can kind of think of your factory or manufacturing plant as a chip. And AMD, a few years back, moved away from the monolithic CPU, which was one die basically, and it excelled at one particular purpose, at one particular price point. It did that very well. But if you wanted to change or improve your performance or do a slightly different task, you basically had to build another chip. Now, chiplets was quite transformational, and this is the whole idea, is that you can expand or contract the chiplets. You can expand or contract the different functions that the chip does. So you can think of it like your manufacturing plant. It's got inputs, it does a process, and it's got outputs. And you can think of the memory, if you like, as a warehouse. There's an input warehouse. There could be work in progress or planned work in progress. We'll talk a bit about that. And then we've got the output warehouse, basically. Now, the advantage is, again, nothing I'll talk about in this series of webinars and workshops. There'll always be a reason. There'll always be a reason why I'm talking about doing it. Okay. The reason we want to do it, in actual fact, is because manufacturers, I would say, on the whole, for the last 15 years at least, have wanted something different from their manufacturing plants. All right, this is partly my day job role. I talk to end users, manufacturers, about how they can make their assets more flexible, more cost effective, more efficient, to meet their needs, 15, 20 years in the future. And what they've got from a procurement point of view, all right, because I work with all sort of aspects of the manufacturing world, is they've got their sort of shopping list of components that they use to build this line. In actual fact, probably every manufacturer I've spoken to in the last 10 years has wanted something different from the supply chain of engineering equipment. And they've asked for, can we do this cell? Can we build this? And basically the answer from the industry has been no every time. And there's a reason why they're asking this. All right. So I'm actually putting it back in the hands of the manufacturers. All right. The manufacturers kind of know what they want. All right. But then we've got some ill-defined visions, very high level visions, and they're trying to join the dots. All right. So this is my aspiration for these series of workshops, these series of webinars, is to help everybody who views them join the dots and visualize the same thing, remove the ambiguity. And the reason we're doing it, or the reason the manufacturers want to do it, is because they want to reduce the time to market of new products. We've got the sustainability issues, there's new materials, they need faster throughput, they need more customization. And with the monolithic or even a flexible monolithic line, you just can't do it. Okay, so what my job is as an architect really is I aid these manufacturers in designing cells, but I also aid them in defining how the cells, the sub units, the substations, the sub modules, and I'll be talking about the data and the physical side of it much more, how all these can work together. Okay, now say a manufacturer wants to develop a new twist on a product. Okay, so it has a new packaging which is much more recyclable. The material to do that is a bit more tricky. The idea is with adaptive manufacturing is we just plug in a new station, unit or module, and we can test it on existing assets on the fly. You can disconnect it and reconnect the old module and be manufacturing within 10-15 minutes if you wanted to. Now, why do we want to do this? Well, it reduces a lot of costs. Okay, so if we were going to develop a new machine or a line, let's just say toothpaste, because that's what I'm sticking with, we would probably have to first do some R&D on the concept. You'd probably end up buying a new machine, which then via conveyor belt fitted into another machine and then another machine. And you had to link all those assets up together. What I'm trying to give everybody over the course of these webinars and workshops is a framework where they can build their own chiplet component. to do their new task. How they can make it more cost effective, how they can do the R&D on the fly, how they can reduce their R&D costs, and how they can track that product through its life cycle and collect the data from the consumers and collect the data from the manufacturing. Okay, so this is digital transformation, it's adaptive manufacturing, it's sustainability all in, and it's all interconnected, as you saw on the other graphic. Okay, so the reason why AMD did this as well is because if there's a specific function that they want in the substrate, in the chip as a whole, they can input the latest technology as a subset inside it. So if you put that in terms of manufacturing, you could have a new cell that's going to be doing much lower or slightly lower volumes, but completely customizable. So this could be lot size 1, but it doesn't differ so much from the existing assets. It's just slightly tweaked. What it does need is it needs you to decouple these cells, and I'll be talking about that in much more detail. Okay, the ultimate aim, as you can see here, which is what I'm circling, is basically we're improving quality, okay, because we can monitor the modules, digital transformation, we can also change the modules. We're reducing the waste, this is the sustainability, and we can handle these new materials and new processes much more easily without having to throw away and reinvest in hardware assets. Okay, so it's also tied in with asset management, you know, and asset management has been doing some great work over the last few years. So my aim, again, through this process is to try and join up all these dots that are all there, technology and the theory behind it and the benefits behind it. I'm going to be linking those together in order to you to actually visualize, stand back and view the whole. Once you've done that, really that's where your skills can come in to innovate within that framework. And that's really, you know, another benefit of adaptive manufacturing is it leaves us all time to go away and innovate, because we're not having to reinvent the wheel every 10 years. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out quickly before I come to the end of this initial webinar, and I'm going to show you the very rough scope of the topics. Okay, so sorry if I make you feel sick. I think I've said that a few times. So it's going to re-render. Here we go. So I'm going to be talking about management and leadership. We'll be talking about the finance side, which I said. I'm going to be going into just a little bit more detail on Industry 4.0 and trying to extract some of the dots out of that, if you like. Going to be talking about process, that gets forgotten a lot. We're going to be talking about decoupling in a visual way. So this is me really visualizing the cells, the chiplets, if you like, in your manufacturing plant. We're going to be talking about collaboration, partnerships, skills spectrum, and we are also going to be talking about what we need to throw in the bin, operations, and also eventually, this will be more in the live events, we're actually going to be designing the systems with visualization, historians, data collections. So I'm not going to be going into the level of detail on digitization or digital transformation that some people do. I'm going to link to those because there's a lot of content out there that's already available and incredibly useful. I'm going to talk a little bit about what other things are wrong with the industry and what I think needs to change. But all in all, I think there's going to be about six webinars and then 6 workshops. But hopefully you'll find it useful, and eventually you'll find it much more in real time. So as a control engineer or as an engineer, hopefully this will be pretty useful to you. So that's me for now. Hopefully in the next week or so, I'll put out the second in the series where I'll be going into a bit more detail about down here, really into defining a little bit more detail of adaptive manufacturing and the implications of that design process. So hopefully you found that really interesting. I look forward to talking to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.